The Reclassification of the American Aboriginal Indian, done by Walter Ashby Plecker. Walter Ashby Plecker was a physician and the first Virginia state registrar of vital statistics, a position he served in from 1912 to 1946. He was a staunch promoter of eugenics, a discredited movement aimed at scientifically proving white racial superiority and thereby justifying the marginalizing of non-white people, employing Virginia's Act to Preserve Racial Integrity. 1924, Plecker effectively separated Virginia citizens into two simplified racial categories, white and colored. The law, which remained in effect until 1967, when it was overturned by the United States Supreme Court in the case of Loving, Virginia, required that a racial description of every person be recorded at birth, while criminalizing marriages between whites and non-whites. Plecker's policies used deceptive scientific evidence to deem blacks a lesser class of human beings, but they also targeted poor whites and anyone he or other eugenicists considered feeble-minded, asserting that Virginia Indians were in fact mixed-blooded Negroes. Plecker also pressured state agencies into reclassifying Indians as colored. The policy's legacy was effectively to erase Indian as an identity and has made it difficult for Virginia Indians to gain state and federal recognition. Early years, Walter Ashby Plecker was born in Augusta County, Virginia, on April 2, 1861, the son of a well-to-do merchant and enslaver. In 1880, Plecker graduated from Hoover Military Academy in Staunton and earned his medical degree from the University of Maryland Medical School in 1885. Plecker worked as a country doctor in Western Virginia and the coal fields of Alabama before settling in Elizabeth County, the area that is now Hampton, in 1892. In 1902, he became the public health officer for Elizabeth City County. He took a special interest in delivering babies, educating midwives, developing a simple use-at-home incubator, working to reduce by half to 5% mortality rates among the poor. Plecker distributed silver nitrate to be administered to the eyes of newborns. Continuing from the documentary of Walter Ashby Plecker. The Racial Integrity Act allowed for one exception to the definition of white person, because many eminent white Virginians believed themselves to be descendants of Pocahontas and John Rolfe. The law allowed for those who had 1/16 or less of the blood of the American Indian and have no other non-Caucasic blood to be deemed to be white persons. Plecker feared that this loophole encouraged mixed-race Virginians who had an interest in passing as white to claim they were Indians. He therefore determined that there are no native-born Virginia Indians free from Negro intermixture. According to Plecker, and through him, the Commonwealth of Virginia, all Indians were now colored. This put Virginia Indians in a bind, perhaps owing to a recognition of the oppressed status of blacks. Indians did not want to be classified as colored. The scholar J. Douglas Smith wrote, "They did not want to be white, but they wanted access to the privileges of whites." Indians were now forced to attend all black schools, whose substandard quality the U.S. Supreme Court recognized years later in Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, 1954, a decision that desegregated public education. In 1930, the General Assembly updated the Racial Integrity Act to define a white person using the one-drop rule. Now a colored person was anyone in whom there is ascertainable any Negro blood. Already believing that all Virginia Indians were in part African American, Plecker now had the go-ahead to officially classify Indians as colored, and in effect define them out of existence. He applied to this process the smooth polish of scientific rationalism. In the Washington Post on January 6, 1945, he described his efforts at tracing very carefully the ethnology of the so-called Indians in Virginia. We have been able to trace many of the persons now asserting themselves as Indians back to the census records of 1830, where their ancestors were listed as free Negroes. He went on to assert that there are no descendants of Virginia Indians claiming or reputed to be Indians who are unmixed with Negro blood. Birth certificates prior to 1924 allowed Indians to be used as a racial classification. Plecker amended Indian certificates by handwriting colored on the back.